It is the Banner Baseball Show. Paul Mancano joined by Bob Phelan of the On the Verge podcast. Today we are going to talk, as you might expect, singing as we have one of the hosts of the On the Verge podcast. We're going to talk Orioles prospects for the majority of this show. We're going to get Bob's thoughts on some names that you may not in the Orioles top 30. Of course, the Orioles top 30 has been refreshed as of late. So we'll get some thoughts on who he thinks we should keep an eye on. We'll also talk about what we saw from Coby Mayo in a brief first big league stint. But first, Bob, we do have to talk about the big league team because we saw yet another heartbreaking loss by the Orioles up in Queens yesterday. We saw the exact same game in games 1 and 3 of that series, the series opener and then the series finale. Orioles are trailing early. They come back. They tie the game at 3-3. It was the same score. Then Brandon Hyde inserts Seranthony Dominguez into the tie game in the ninth inning, and he gives up a walk-off solo homer. These are not save situations that the Orioles are facing right now, but it's clear that they are really struggling with back end of the bullpen, high leverage innings right now. And it's just tough to watch right now.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. But yeah, it has been really tough to see, especially Sir Anthony Dominguez. I think that was a good trade. I like his arm talent. He's only given up 4 hits as an Oriole. Unfortunately, there are 4 home runs and come in inopportune times. I was feeling pretty optimistic when he got Francisco Alvarez, a little payback for Tuesday's game, or Monday's game. And yeah, unfortunately, it didn't work out again. And got to figure out this bullpen before October rolls around.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because you certainly can't blame the front office and Mike Elias for the number of injuries, the absurd plague that has affected the Orioles pitching staff, seeing all the guys go down with injury. That nobody in baseball could have predicted that. No front office could have predicted that kind of bad injury luck. Because in an ideal world right now, you would have guys like maybe Tyler Wells would be in this bullpen if more guys were healthy and if he were healthy in this Orioles rotation. You could slot him into a high leverage spot in the bullpen. We saw how good he was at the end of last year. Albert Suarez, in an ideal world, as great as he's been, would probably not be starting games. If more guys were healthy, Albert Suarez would be back at the end of that bullpen and you could rely on him. So you can't fault the Orioles for the sheer number of injuries, but it is frustrating because you can look at the deadline. You mentioned the Orioles picking up Seranthony Dominguez. They get the lefty Gregory Soto from the Phillies in the trade where they send Seth Johnson out. And they get, Trevor Rogers, who is a starter, but has not given them quality innings so far. He was really acquired with 2025, 2026 in mind, but he has yet to record an out in the 6th inning for the Orioles in a brief stint. So that places undue stress on the bullpen. It's not great return so far from the trade deadline. I know we're just 3 weeks past the deadline, but you haven't seen, with the exception of Zach Eflin, he's been phenomenal. And he's on the IL right now, and you hope that he comes back from shoulder soreness soon. But it's been tough to watch Gregory Soto go through his struggles, Trevor Rogers go through his struggles, and now Seranthony Dominguez, 3 deadline acquisitions.
Yeah, it is really unfortunate. That's the thing with the trade deadline. You can make as many trades as you want. Especially it's only 2 months. You have these guys 2.5 months. You never know, short sample size, how they're going to perform, and injuries are a part of it as well. And yeah, not only do all these starting pitcher injuries affect the rotation, obviously they affect the bullpen because you're stretched in there. If you have more depth and health, then you can push guys back into the bullpen, which strengthens that, like you said. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of all around baseball, but especially in Baltimore, as of late, it feels like we got lucky in 2023, not so much in 2024.
Yeah, and a lot of that depth in the Orioles rotation last year, that injury luck played a factor into their ability to win 101 games. But you saw it wear on the team as they got closer and closer to the playoffs. Obviously, Felix Bautista going out right near the end of the season. And this bullpen was never going to be the same without Felix Bautista. He was an all-star closer. He's one of the best closers in baseball last year. So you knew it was going to be impossible to replace him for 2024. But they did sign Craig Kimbrel for a $13 million contract, and you weren't expecting him to come right in and be an all-star, but you were hoping to get a little bit more out of him than what they've gotten. We've seen his velocity dip in recent outings. Orioles have pretty much taken him out of the closer role entirely, despite the fact that Mike Elias has said he's our closer long-term. You knew when you signed him that there were playoff struggles. You knew his age, 35, and you knew that he was chasing a saves record all time that he was going to try to reach. And right now, it looks like he is farther and farther away from that because the Orioles don't trust him, and rightfully so, in high leverage and save situations right now.
Yeah, I mean, no one could be Felix Bautista. What he did last year was sensational, but it looked like in the first half that Kimbrel could at least step in and be a solid closer. Unfortunately, other than he had a couple weeks there where he struggled, and he's turned those couple weeks and made them look pretty good lately. The velocity dipping as the season goes on, not a great sign. Hopefully, he can rebound a little bit for the rest of the season, but it's hard to, especially going into the playoffs. It's going to be hard to count on him no matter how well he performs the rest of this season.
Yeah, just feels like deja vu. We are exactly where we were at this point last year with the Orioles in need of a closer. At this point last year, it was because Felix Bautista went down with injury. And right now, it's because the closer that they signed to replace Felix Bautista is not performing like he should. So they have some problems to fix there at the big league roster. But let's talk about the farm system, Bob, because there are always brighter days ahead when you're looking at the Orioles farm system. The Orioles, amazingly, no longer have the top farm system in all of baseball. It's a sad day when MLB Pipeline came out with their farm system rankings and they had the Orioles third behind their division foe to Tampa Bay Rays and the Minnesota Twins. It's because of graduations and trades, obviously. Heston Kjerstad, Colton Cowser, those guys graduating, they were top 100 prospects. The trades like Joey Ortiz, DL Hall being sent away, Connor Norby, Seth Johnson even was a top 30 prospect. So you've seen natural thinning of the Orioles top 30. But it feels like a page has been turned in this Orioles rebuild, not having the top farm system. And I know Mike Elias would trade it every day to not have the top farm system if it meant having big league success. But it just feels like after so many years of domination at the top, it's a new day where the Orioles are not top dog.
Yeah, it's true. It is a little weird as someone who's covered the minor leagues since March 2020. It's like seems like, oh, we're back into the regular mix of things here with other teams. But I think that's the goal, is to build that farm system up, graduate them, and look, all these guys are producing at the major league level. I think we're one of the most homegrown teams, at least on the position side in baseball, and doing well with it. So there hasn't, knock on wood, been many busts as far as like top prospects getting to the majors and performing. So yeah, this is just part of the deal. And then hopefully they can, with their solid player development system they have in place, they can develop some more guys, and they'll probably range anywhere from 5 to 17, somewhere around there for the next several years is my guess.
Yeah, I think Mike Elias is perfectly fine with not having the top farm system in baseball, but I don't think he ever wants to dip too far
Yeah.
in the rankings because you look at great teams around baseball. I mean, the Guardians, they got lucky in winning the lottery and they, got one of the top prospects that allowed them to be a top 5 farm system. But you see the Dodgers are routinely ranked in the top 10. Even great teams that have good big league rosters and have high payrolls, you do want to stay on the upper echelon of the prospect rankings because it is called a pipeline for a reason. You want to keep the talent flowing. And anytime you see major injuries go down at your big league roster, you can't always replace those guys with free agents or trades. You have to have natural replacements in-house, and that's what the Orioles are hoping to do. I do wonder where they would have been had Jackson Holliday graduated before their midseason rankings, because he still is the top prospect in all of baseball, but we're seeing how much playing time he's receiving at the big league level. He's not going to be there very long.
Yeah, I imagine he's going to graduate pretty soon. No, that'll drop him in probably closer to the top 10 range. But again, that's kind of what you want. And Samuel Basayo is still kicking around, making a case to be number 1 prospect by season's end. Coby Mayo, top 5, top 10 prospect in a lot of places as well. So still tons of talent in the system. We'll see if they can get any more of these super top end guys. I think they will probably rely more on the international side than the drafting in the amateur side, just because now we're not drafting in the top 5 picks anymore, which is also a good thing.
Yeah, and you're also seeing the investments that Mike Elias and this front office have made in the international market. It's not that when you're looking at the MLB pipeline top 30 and you're looking past 10, you're looking in the 11 through 30 range. That used to be populated by a lot of mid to late round Orioles draft picks, and now you're seeing a lot of Orioles international signees. It's something that when Mike Elias came, he noticed, and it was obvious from day one that the Orioles were not getting talent from the international pipeline because they were not investing in that. Now you're starting to see those guys that they signed in the early years of Mike Elias's tenure come up and reach the minor leagues and reach the United States, reach Aberdeen, hopefully reach Bowie like Samuel Basayo has. And you're starting to see these guys now creep through the bottom rungs of the system. One guy I do want to talk about who we've already seen at the big league level for a brief stint, Coby Mayo. And we go through this same cycle every time, Bob, where fans are clamoring for a top prospect. They cannot wait to see this guy. What are they keeping him down for? They got to get him up here. He's just crushing AAA competition. We saw it with Heston Kjerstad and Jackson Holliday. We saw it with Coby Mayo. And then he comes up to the big leagues. He struggles in 3 games and fans want to send him back down. We saw a tiny, tiny sample size from Coby Mayo. He had 1 hit, 3 walks, and 20 plate appearances. I cannot stress enough how little fans should read into his tiny, tiny introduction to pro ball.
Yeah, seriously. I mentioned that as well on our show, that it's like a cycle of what are they waiting for? They're ruining his, he could help the team right now. He comes up, struggles, just like Colton Cowser last year. Oh, he's a bust, send him back down. He's not ready. I told you so. And then when they inevitably adjust and turn things back around, they're all on board again, which that's just fandom. But yeah, even Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, they had very slow starts to their careers as well. They just were able, with the team not being as good, to just fight it out at the major league level and learn on the fly. Whereas guys like Cowser, Holiday, and now Mayo can take what little they got to see. And the difference between major league and AAA pitching is bigger than ever. So to be able to come up, work with the major league coaching staff, see it in real time, and then go back with the plan on how to come back and be more successful, I think it's worked so far. I think the only guy who didn't come up and immediately struggle like that was Jordan Westberg, and he improved drastically as well from 2024 to 2023. Knock on wood that he comes back this season. But yeah, I have no doubts that Coby Mayo is going to be a fantastic hitter in the major leagues for a very long time.
Yeah, and Jordan Westberg was an advanced prospect coming up like he did in the midpoint of the 2023 season. Obviously played at a high-level SEC program at Mississippi State, and he came right up and made an impact, but that's just not the norm. That is more the exception than it is the rule. A couple guys who are on the lower levels of the Orioles prospect system, although one guy has been creeping up towards the big leagues, Enrique Bradfield Jr. and Vance Honeycutt. Honeycutt, the new draftee first-round pick by the Orioles in this July's draft, and Enrique Bradfield Jr., the first-round pick by the Orioles a year ago. 2 different prospects, 2 elite defensive center fielders from everything that we've heard. But Bradfield just now reaching Double-A, somebody whose bat has been a question, but his plate discipline certainly is not. His speed obviously is not. And his defense in center field is not. He has just 3 homers so far this season with High A Aberdeen and now Double-A Bowie. But he has 7 hits in his first 7 games in Double-A Bowie, plus, of course, 4 stolen bases. Plate discipline is such an underrated tool with this kid because he has 8 walks and just 4 strikeouts in 7 games with Double-A Bowie. Do you feel like that is something that we should be talking about more when we talk about Enrique Bradfield?
Yeah, I think so. And, you know, when the Orioles had all these guys coming up, Gunnar, Jordan Westberg, these guys, when they were coming up, they were more offensive minded, whereas Bradfield, a 5-tool player, like he can make contact with the ball. Like you said, he's got a great eye at the plate, takes his walks, steals his bases, plays great defense in center field, higher floor, maybe a little bit lower ceiling than those guys, but it's just a different style of prospect positionally than the Orioles were bringing up initially. So yeah, I think he's a little bit underrated at this point because he can go bare minimum, even if he doesn't improve his hit tool at all. He's a major league player. He'll be a 4th outfielder with his defense and speed alone. So the fact that he's gone up a level and continues to improve throughout the year, I think his batting average has gotten better progressively throughout this season. He'll probably never be a power hitter, but hopefully he can find some gaps, get some doubles and triples in there. So yeah, I think he's a super solid prospect. And Vance Honeycutt is kind of in the same mold where great defense, great speed, great arm. He actually has big power, but the hit tool is a question. So we'll see again if they can develop that, which they've proven so far to be able to do that.
Yeah, the power certainly is there with close to 30 home runs in his final season at UNC. The speed is there with close to 30 stolen bases. And from everything we've heard, he's an elite defensive center fielder as well. One of the best center fielders in college baseball last year with UNC. So he has those tools. It's the strikeout rate that has been most concerning. And that's the reason that the Orioles were able to get him in the 20s like they did. But that combination of speed, of defense, of power is just hard to come by for a prospect. And I think we could be looking at, with both Enrique Bradfield Jr. and Vance Honeycutt, we've seen, other toply, highly drafted, outfield prospects come up through the system like Dylan Beavers and Judd Fabian. But these two guys in Bradfield and Honeycutt, it's clear the Orioles invested a lot in them because they believe that they can be everyday big leaguers at some point in their future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just organizationally as a whole, the Orioles aren't as concerned with swing and miss as some other teams are. I think if you swing and miss a lot, but when you make contact, you make a big impact on the ball, hit it a long way, I think they're going to be happy with that. So swing decisions and impact on the ball is what they're looking for in these guys. At least Honeycutt with the impact, Bradfield in other ways. Yeah, they fit the bill.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about some new names that have populated the Orioles top 30, because Orioles fans can't get used to hearing the same names over and over again, like Joey Ortiz and Connor Norby. They're going to have to learn some new names. And one new name is Brandon Young, right-handed pitcher, 26 years old. Mike Elias mentioned his name recently when talking about how the Orioles could rely on their AAA pitching depth to help them get through some of the injuries that they've had. MLB Pipeline has him as the Orioles' number 21 prospect. You guys on The Verge considered him a close to top 10 prospect, just outside your top 10. He was an undrafted guy after the shortened 2020 draft out of Louisiana Lafayette. He's been in Bowie so far this year. He's got a 4.09 ERA with 36 strikeouts, and then made his way up to Norfolk with 64 innings and a 3.38 ERA. What do you like about Brandon Young, and why do you have him rated so highly?
Just what a great story. Undrafted free agent. He went down with Tommy John surgery, comes back from that this year and just has been lights out. He's just got a great starter's build. He's tall. He's got a really, really solid fastball with great inverted break. It's hoppy. It sits low to mid 90s, but it plays better than that. It's got a great curveball, really good changeup. Slider is okay, could use some work, but nice 4-pitch mix. And I think he's just going to be able to go out there, throw strikes, and be like a mid to back end starter on a good team like the Orioles. Yeah, a lot to like. And he's got some great hair, great beard. So different look on the mound as well.
Yeah, 6'6", so he's obviously got great extension. He's got kind of an imposing presence up there. He's going to be Rule 5 eligible this December, but there's almost no question that the Orioles are going to find a way to add him to their 40-man roster before we even get to that point. Probably, perhaps, over the final month plus of the regular season. He's somebody that Elias mentioned as somebody who could come up and help this team. Do you imagine him being somebody that we could see make his big league debut before the end of the regular season?
Yeah, I do, which would shock me if I heard myself say that earlier in the season, because he's come a long way and there's people ahead of him. Well, obviously, we thought we had the depth at the starting pitching level, but yeah, I would not be surprised if he got a few starts, or at least later in September if he was used out of the bullpen as a long man or what have you, just to help out in any which way you can. You need all the arms you can get, and he's a quality arm. So, yeah, at bare minimum, he'll be put on the 40-man in the offseason, but I suspect it will happen before then as well.
Yeah, we've seen Cade Povich bounce back and forth between Baltimore and Norfolk. Unfortunately, Chase McDermott, another highly rated pitching prospect who made his debut obviously earlier this year, is on the injured list, hoping to get him back at some point. But in the meantime, Brandon Young, somebody to watch, somebody who probably won't be making his debut this year, but who has gotten a lot of buzz since he entered the Orioles system. Patrick Reilly, 22 years old. The most underrated move that the Orioles made at the trade deadline, because there was that flurry of moves right before the 6 p.m. deadline where they acquire Eloy Jimenez and Austin Slater. They get Patrick Reilly in a minor leaguer for minor leaguer trade where they send Billy Cook out, who is going to be Rule 5 eligible this fall. I think the Orioles really didn't have room for Billy Cook. He was a nice, intriguing, positionless prospect, could be thrown all over the diamond, but probably didn't have a future in Baltimore. And they get somebody in Patrick Reilly, who is an intriguing arm, a right-hander who played at Vanderbilt and played with Enrique Bradfield Jr. as well. So a nice story. He's down in Bowie performing well.
Yeah, absolutely love this trade. I mean, I was a Billy Cook fan, like just super solid player. Probably be on a major league bench for a little bit of time here. He'll have a career, but when you traded away guys like Jackson Ballmeister, Seth Johnson, Moises Chase, to be able to get back a high upside starting pitching prospect at the same time, it really helps just bolster the farm system and keep that depth going. And that's what good teams do. They'll, you trade from your depth, but then you got to backfill it. You trade the guys that are closer to the majors when you have not much room at the major league level, and then you get guys lower down that can work their way back up. So yeah, super underrated move, and he's got a great slider. He's got really good stuff. It's just a matter of, is he going to be able to stick as a starter, or is he going to be a really good reliever, and can he develop a third, fourth pitch to really put things all together?
I think if Mike Elias could make more moves like this, he would be doing it 10 times out of 10 because
Oh,
anytime you can just pick up an intriguing young arm for somebody who a position player who did not have a future in Baltimore. If he could have done this for Hudson Haskin or Terran Vavra years ago, I think he would have. So if the Orioles can do maybe 5 more of these, swap some of these position players they just don't have room for and find an intriguing arm, that would certainly be something to watch. But it's nice when a trade like that comes across his desk, and I'm sure he jumped at the opportunity to add some pitching depth. One guy I do want to talk about as well, who has made his way up into the Orioles top 30 according to MLB Pipeline. He's now ranked as the Orioles number 11 prospect. Luis De Leon, 21-year-old lefty, international signee in December of 2021 out of the Dominican Republic. He's quietly been dominating between Delmarva and now high A Aberdeen. 2.25 ERA in 7 starts with Delmarva. A little bit of a higher ERA, 5.5 in 50 innings with high A Aberdeen. But the stuff is great. The strikeout rates are great. Somebody who was not ranked in the Orioles top 30 last year is suddenly a lefty to keep an eye on.
yeah, just really good stuff. Especially his changeup is like a real serious weapon, and he's still young for the level at 21 years old. His FIP and XFIP are more closer to the mid fours, so the ERA is a little fluky. He's still got great stuff. He's going out there getting the innings. Yeah, I fully expect him to be a guy. And honestly, we've been calling this the year of the pitcher because I think the next wave, after all these position prospects graduate from the top of the past couple of years of the Orioles system, there's just a ton of really high upside arms, including Luis De Leon and Pat Reilly, who he prefers to go by Pat, so he just wants to be coaching everybody. But there's also some other names here, if you don't mind me listing some off.
Yeah.
Michael Ferret, Trey Gibson, Keeler Morphe. He's an 18-year-old Dominican, just coming up from Dominican Prospect League, who is pitching in Delmarva now, making a huge jump. Apparently, he was considered for Kylie McDaniel's top 100 overall prospects in baseball, which is crazy. Electric arm can touch 100. Nestor German, Zach Fruit, Edgar Portes, Juan Nunez is hurt, but he's got a great arm. Cameron Weston, Trace Bright, and there's guys beyond that. Like, I think Orioles fans that have been preaching for the pitching over the past few years will be happy when the next wave starts to hit Baltimore.
Yeah, it's these guys, a lot of guys that they drafted on day 3 of the MLB draft in the last couple of years. We saw the Orioles deploy that strategy this year's draft where they wait until the end of the draft to start making their run on pitchers so they can develop these guys over time. We're seeing those guys, and then we're seeing a lot of international signees. So the Orioles are adding to their pipeline. They're just doing it through different means than we're used to because they're not drafting at the top of the draft anymore, which is a good thing, but it means that they have to get creative in how they acquire some of their talent. Bob, I can't thank you enough for offering your insight into the Orioles farm system, taking some time out of your busy day to talk about the Orioles prospects because it's still an exciting time. No longer the top farm system in baseball, but there's always good prospects to talk about. And On the Verge has you covered there. You guys do a great job covering the Orioles farm system. And I hope to hear many more of your episodes through the final month and a half of the regular season.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, I could do this all day, but I guess I should go deliver the mail now. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
yeah, absolutely. Bob Phelan, you can follow him on Twitter at the Oriole Report. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. Please like, rate, review, subscribe. Subscribe to the Baltimore Banner, $1 for 6 months. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much for tuning in.